Brisbane, Australia. This is episode 92 of The Normal Blokes, a podcast dedicated to improving the competitive 40k experience. I'm Dineeth, and today we are joined by Liam.
Good evening, man. How are you?
Yeah, good, dude. Just the two of us today. And, you know, Liam has been working tirelessly behind the scenes on his new army that has a really cool new model, Be'lakor. So, I guess we're going to be diving into that. Liam's going to be taking me on a magic carpet ride with this new set of rules that everyone thinks are, apparently not amazing, mate.
I'm going to be taking you on a magic carpet ride. Is what happens when GW gives me one new model and I write 57 army lists about this one model. That's on GW end of the day, not on me. So basically, the model's been out for a while. Be'lakor's big bad, the first demon prince, but he's now got his own sort of mini sub faction, which obviously comes with it a whole heap of really weird rules. Some really sort of a very restrictive detachment is what I'm going to call it. I mean, they're called restrictions for a reason, but I'd argue it's one of the most restrictive detachments in the game. Yeah. Some stratagems and some psychic powers. But the main reason why Dineeth and I wanted to have a chat about this tonight is, first and foremost, I'm going to be honest with you, I love this. I wanted to talk about it. But also on top of that, I think it's really interesting how even before some armies see the tabletop, and I think it's the same with all new releases, I think people make their own conclusions about whether or not something will be competitive or not. And obviously, all around the world, as we've spoken about many times on this podcast, the meta is very diverse and very different in different places in the world. And I really see this Disciples of Be'lakor army to be something to be feared, especially in a dense terrain environment. I think it's got very specific tools to be absolutely oppressive in an environment where I think many Australians are used to playing in. So, without further ado, Dineeth, do you have your cheat sheet open?
I do. So I haven't looked as deeply as Liam has. You've played how many games with Be'lakor now?
The rules have legally been out for -2 days, okay. And I have played 7 games.
Okay,
with
classic.
The new Be'lakor.
Classic.
You've
taken a few scalps. You've one-hit Mortarion, I heard.
I did. Yeah, Be'lakor did pick up Morty in one go, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. Now, just looking at, we'll go into how to make a Disciples of Be'lakor army. But looking at just an overview, it feels, we talked about this before the episode, and you mentioned something really interesting. It feels like Ynnari, like it feels like this amalgamation army. I guess we'll dive into that, but there is a lot of restrictions. We'll first talk about Be'lakor, Be'lakor's data sheet first. Mm-hmm. Take it away, mate.
So Be'lakor, interestingly, fulfills a pretty similar role to things like Morty and Magnus. He's a fair chunk cheaper. He's only 360 points. And probably the biggest thing that I like about Be'lakor is that he's got the magic number. He's got 16 wounds, not 18 wounds. Those 2 less wounds mean he can be obscured, which is an absolutely huge deal. And he's worth a few less points for things like Bring It Down, which obviously has a points cap at 18 too. So that's a really important point to say. He can be hidden behind ruins. And the model's actually a bit smaller than it appeared in the photos. I really got the vibe that he was going to be freaking huge, but he's actually, he's medium. Like, to be honest, he's not really going to, he doesn't look like Morty or Magnus. He's about, I'd say a third smaller than both of them. This big bad moves 12, 6 attacks, hits and shoots on 2s. Bit redundant because he's got no guns and no ability to take guns. But hey, look, if he ever does finger guns at you, you want to make sure he hits. He has a 4-up invo, and this is where this model really starts to stand out compared to other models. Now, he's got a 4-up invo, which is not abnormal for a big bad. Both Morty and Magnus have those things too, and most of the army's new models do, like the Val for Sisters and various other characters. But where Be'lakor stands out is that he's got a variety of special rules to make him really hard to take down. So in addition to the 4-up invo, he's neg1 to hit always, and neg1 to wound in addition to shooting. So neg1 to hit and wound in shooting. But also on top of that, you can never re-roll hit rolls against Be'lakor. So that means that, your average ballistic skill 3 model is hitting you on 4s and can never re-roll the hit roll. This is particularly potent depending on what you're versing, because there are a variety of armies, Space Marines, AdMech, Sisters of Battle, that heavily lean into full re-rolls to hit to add reliability to their shooting. Is this alone going to keep him alive against a whole gun line? No. But one of the things about rerolls is they add reliability, and this takes away that reliability. So what's annoying about Be'lakor is that your rolls can just swing. Because you don't get rerolls, you might just miss with all your shots, and that's all you can do. No matter what you put in your army, you can't add reliability versus Be'lakor. It just doesn't work. So that's pretty bloody annoying. And the neg 1 to wound actually can't be understated as well.
It's crazy.
Can't be overstated, sorry.
Absolutely crazy.
Because he's T7, right? So you're talking about, heavy bolters, bolt guns, even like things around the strength 6-7 category are wounding him on either 5s or 6s. Anything lower than strength 7 is wounding him on 6s. So quite a lot of armies that have relied on, seriously bulk shooting in the strength, 4, 5, 6 category is all really bad at killing Be'lakor, especially when that bulk shooting has always relied on rerolls. Big blobs of sisters, even things like eradicators and stuff are going to be annoyed because they're hitting and wounding Be'lakor on 4s. So that profile is pretty terrifying durability wise. I mean, Dineeth, you've played a variety of high damage dealing armies. I think everyone has at some point, and at the moment you're playing some Deathwatch, and you're really, really cleaning up with that. When you look at a profile like this, I mean, it's not going to be like a point and click. He goes away. He's pretty durable.
Yeah, and like armies that rely on not just rerolls to actually get the damage through, like get the hits through, but armies that rely on rerolls to, not die to overcharging plasma. Like, I don't know if you'll want to overcharge plasma into this guy because you'll just kill half your units. It's just silly. And I think the biggest thing with this neg 1 to wound, you look at melter weapons, yeah, sure, you go from wounding on a 3 to a 4. But sometimes what happens is with these big models that have a 4-up invo, you want to just chip damage them down. And if anyone's played against the neg 1 to wound against ranged Keeper of Secrets, like that's a classic model that you just have so much trouble doing chip damage because anything less than like strength 7, you just automatically get pushed to wounding on 6s. So it what it feels like? It feels like 7th edition when you've got your little guns that can't interact with your big units. Like, it feels like that.
Couldn't wound
yeah. It feels like that. Like, I didn't play much 7th, but there were definitely games where I'm like, oh, I didn't bring any heavy bolters. I can't do anything. So, like, yeah, it adds that little dynamic, and it'll be interesting to see if Games Workshop does this more with the big baddies that they don't want to just get plinked down by lasguns and bolters. So, I mean, I'm more scared, not because my melter and plasma won't go through. I'm more scared because if I lose those tools against this army, I'm done. There's no way I'm bringing him down. It's just not happening.
Yep, absolutely. And I guess on top of that as well, those big damage weapons that you mentioned, like the melters and las cannons, they're down to hitting and wounding on 4s. You've gone from like 3s and 3s against, like, let's say a Land Raider or even something like Magnus or Morty. You've gone from 3s and 3s to 4s and 4s, which is already a really annoying you're back to shooting like guardsmen, which anyone who's played guard knows can be really unreliable.
Like
sometimes will spike.
3s and 3s is like a bit below 50%. 4s and 4s is 25%. It's like half as bad.
Yep, exactly right. So that's all well and good. But again, I also can't overstate how big 16 wounds is. So him having 16 wounds means that, sure, you're going to struggle to chip him down, but also you're probably going to have to kill him in 1 turn or 2, unlike Morty or Magnus, where you can actually start engaging him straight away, because you have to start. He can literally just hide behind any 5-foot-tall ruin. He can be completely invisible, which is something that I think has almost been the main reason, I think, why Morty and Magnus, in my opinion anyway, the main reason they don't see competitive play. Because they don't interact with terrain well. And I think, would you agree with that, Dineeth?
Oh, of course, man. Because there's so many armies that if you jump on Morty, like especially Magnus, if you jump on him unbuffed, you can just take him out of the game. And, Mortarion's interesting because he fits a slightly different role. But like Mortarion's obviously a bit more durable, but you can always interact with him. Like if you go first with a big gun, it's like, cool, well, I'm obviously going to give it a good shot at killing Morty. Do you want to talk about the rest of the abilities and the keywords on Be'lakor that make him so interesting?
Oh, yeah. So I guess just very quickly, we've spoken a lot about his durability and the fact that he's 360 points, but also he hits like an absolute freight train. Dude's got 6 attacks. He's got a reasonably mediocre sweep profile in comparison to Morty, but his normal attacks are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
They cop in at strength 12, AP 4, ignore all invo saves, and 3+ D3 damage. So these, he will essentially roll in and kill 5 to 6 Death Shroud Terminators with a high degree of reliability. He is absolutely preposterous at killing characters. You could arguably put like one attack into a variety of different characters and reasonably expect them to die if they've got 4 or 5 wounds, simply because he's hitting and wounding on 2s, re-roll 1s to hit, and ignoring invo saves, ignoring a 3-up armor and a 2-up armor will only get a 6-up save. So he's really, really good at killing big models. Like we mentioned before, I played a few practice games where he just killed Mortarion in one go, which is not even unreasonable. Now, Dineeth mentioned the keywords because all of this sounds fine and dandy. He's only got 6 attacks, so he's only going to kill 6 models. But wait, there's more. Games Workshop decided finally to give the Demon Prince, who has the favor of all the Chaos Gods in the fluff, they gave him every keyword. He has Zench, Nurgle, Khorne, and Slaanesh keywords, which is, again, can't actually be understated because the vast majority of Chaos Demon stratagems don't work off like infantry or biker or whatever. They work off just the keyword itself. So a Khorne Demon unit can fight twice. Be'lakor is a Khorne Demon unit. Need I say more? The dude can just fight twice. And this is actually particularly potent because as the new books have been coming out, the amount of fight twice abilities have really been mitigated. Space Marines went to only assault intercessors. A variety of other armies sort of lost the abilities, or it went to only infantry or only biker. So this is particularly unique because this is a new super unit, for want of a better term, that has an immense amount of stratagems he can use. An immense amount of stratagems.
It's
like twice.
He's like Thanos with 4 Infinity Stones in his gauntlet, man. He's just like unreal, right? Like you can even cast Hysterical Frenzy on him to fight a 3rd time, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, how do you kill him? So he's got a 4-up invo, he's got no armor save, so you kill him with volume. But he's a Slaanesh demon. So for 1 CP, he can have an aura of neg1 attack. That's pretty annoying. Oh, you get him down to low wounds. Okay, I'm going to use 2 CP to heal him D3 wounds, Nurgle Demon strat, and then I'm going to cast a Nurgle Demon Psychic Power on him to heal him D3 again. And now he's just healed 6 wounds. You can actually heal him all 18 of his wounds in one turn, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But that's a combination of different things that I found when reading this book. But, he can use every ability in this army. All the Chaos Demon stuff stacks with him. The Crimson Crown Relic, which has been kind of ubiquitous in Khorne Demon units, every 6 to wound makes an additional attack. Be'lakor's a Khorne Demon. Put a little Herald next to him and he's got exploding 6s to wound. There's so much different crap, for want of a better term, that you can do with Be'lakor because he has all of these magic keywords. Now, I think to kind of really sum this up, the thing that's really important to know about Be'lakor is that he's just a HQ choice. He's not even a Lord of War. And because of that, you can chuck him in an army with 3 Nurglings in a little patrol in any Chaos army. You're playing Chaos Knights, you can just do Be'lakor, 3 Nurglings. He doesn't have to be your Warlord. He only has to be a Warlord if you want to take a Disciples of Be'lakor army, which we'll talk about later. So unlike, potentially Morty or Magnus, Morty has to be your Warlord if he's in a Supreme Command, or anyone in a Supreme Command has to be your Warlord, but Morty really loses a lot of versatility if he's not your Warlord. He loses all those Warlord traits that make him crazy. And Magnus, in a super heavy orcs would cost you 3 CP, and you don't get anything else out of it. Whereas Be'lakor, again, can really be slotted in to pretty much any army, which I think is pretty sick. The total combo there.
He's like a good but expensive, but significantly more hectic Keeper of Secrets, right?
Well, the way I look at it, dude, is a Knight Rampager is 425 points.
Yeah.
Be'lakor and 3 Nurglings is 426 points.
Okay.
For 1 point, you get a little OBSEC unit, and your knight that is more durable and hits harder and has psychic powers and is literally better in every way than a Knight Rampager, and can hide behind walls, which, again, if you've ever played Knights, you know that pain. You know that sucks, that you can't hide behind walls.
Yeah, dude, this guy has fly. He's just jumping through that wall in the movement phase and just crushing you. Like, it's crazy.
Yep, it's actually annoying. So, Dineeth, do you want to dive into, running a Be'lakor army?
Yeah, so there's a lot here to unpack. There's definitely a lot here to unpack.
There's a lot to talk about.
So, with some of these Warzone Charadon packs that are coming out, you get these armies of renown. One of them is the Disciples of Be'lakor. So pretty much the biggest restriction is Be'lakor has to be a warlord, and it can't have any other demon princes in the army. You also can't have a whole heap of other stuff. So you can't have any blood, like greater demons, bloodthirsters, locks, great clean ones, whatever. No demon engines, specifically no world eaters, Thousand Sons, Death Guard, Emperor's Children, no Chaos Knights, no Trader Titans, and it also calls out the god-specific Marines. So call them Berserkers, Rubrics, Plague Marines, Noise Marines. With the normal stuff we're seeing in Death Guard, you can't include more Cultists and Heretic Astartes infantry, blah, blah, blah. And this big one, Liam, is you've got to kind of have even Chaos Demons. Do you want to go into this bit?
Yeah, so this bit is the restriction for this army that I think has the most people annoyed. And it's fluffy, but you're right, it's hard work. So you can't include a second demon unit, let's say of Khorne, until you have 1 demon unit of every other Chaos God. So it basically makes you build your army in 4s. You have to have Zench, Khorne, Slanesh, and Nurgle before you can have a second unit of any of those. And that doesn't just unlock them infinitely. That applies for your second choice, your third choice, your fourth choice, and so on. You have to build everything in 4s.
So, yeah, it kind of just forced like this quote-unquote balanced army, right, in terms of the 4 Chaos Gods. Like, everything has to be fairly even.
Yep. And it's quite fluffy, obviously, because Be'lakor has all 4 keywords. It's worth mentioning that Be'lakor and Chaos Space Marine units do not count for this restriction. So you can't just miss out on one god and say, hey, I took Be'lakor. Unfortunately, it's other units.
Yeah.
Now, I can understand a lot of the frustration. I won't be too negative because I'm obviously really positive about this book, but I can understand how these restrictions look on paper. Because when you look at competitive Chaos lists now, you literally see some cult-specific troops. I'm talking, Death Guard, obviously Plague Marines, but then you're looking at Noise Marines that have been prevalent for a while. You have Greater Demons. You have the Unkillable Lock. You have Keepers of Secrets. You have... I'm mind blanking. What are those silly dreadnoughts? The Decimators.
The Decimators.
The lovely, like Arnold, football head-looking dreadnoughts. They look ridiculous. Anyway, you have all these models, and they're all demon engines. Disco Lords are demon engines. You have so many different builds that are entirely invalidated by that restriction. So I can understand if you've been playing Chaos for a while and you have a very specific list in mind, or even a couple of lists. Those lists probably don't work at the moment. Or almost certainly they don't work with these restrictions. But it's important to note what you get from adhering to these restrictions, I think, is 100% worth its weight in gold. Because one of the things about Chaos builds in general, and this is going to be like the only thing I really say about this, and I think it's a pretty fair comment, most Chaos lists are really killy, but don't play the mission particularly well. I'm looking at you, Emperor's Children Terminators. They come down and they kill everything. They're really, really killy. But they're not OBSEC. They're not really high models. They take a lot of CP. They're not exactly what you'd call, a versatile mission playing army. They're a blunderbuss in disguising itself as a scalpel. And one thing that has always played the game well is hordes, infantry, basic units that people take for granted and play the mission really well. And Dineeth, that's what this army buffs. That's what it's for. It's there to buff basic ass troops that previously you probably wouldn't take. Now, I think, without beating around the bush too much, I'll dive into the main faction benefit. So, when you're building an army, you look at like your legion traits or your overall faction trait. Hey, I'm going to play Mars because I get everything. Stuff like that, right? So what do you actually get by playing Disciples of Be'lakor? Well, you get two things, or three things primarily. You get to soup Chaos Space Marines and Demons. The one thing that Chaos players have wanted to do for like time immemorial, and it's always been illegal. It's always broken detachments, and people have always hated that. So you get that. You can put them both in one detachment, but also all of your Chaos Space Marine units lose the Legion keyword, and they gain a Legion ability. Legion ability is +1 to combat attrition checks, which is means you can't fail if you're over 50% because your ones become 2s, so that's okay. For big squads, again, you can see a theme here, things that buff big squads. But also your neg1 to hit outside of 12, so basically the Alpha Legion trait. Yep. Alpha Legion was already a pretty decent choice. So by and large, you're basically playing Alpha Legion with some morale mitigation here. That's okay.
Yep.
What is amazing and cannot, again, be overstated is the Demon's ability that you get.
This is hectic. This is wild.
So the Demon's ability is any loci that Demons would get, which is a loci is basically just an aura that every Chaos Demons character gets by default. So instead of getting their normal one for their specific Chaos God, you get a special one. And that special one is all demonic disciples, which is the keyword for Be'lakor demons, basically. All of them get neg1 to hit in shooting if you're outside of 12, and your opponent can never re-roll hit rolls against you in the shooting phase. Now, this sounds okay when you read it, but then put this into practice. So there was a really prevalent meta list a while ago in Australia, and it was Horde Plague Bearers. Now, the reason why the Horde Plague Bearers were ridiculous is you needed an incredible amount of volume to kill Plague Bearers. Because, they had 5-up, 5-ups. They could go to a 4-up, 5-up. They were incredibly resilient, and you just needed to pile on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wounds to kill them. And how did you do that? Well, first of all, Space Marines killed that army because they had things like aggressors that could reroll hits. You now can't reroll hits, and you're neg1 to hit. Your reliability has gone from, for argument's sake, hitting 75% of the time to hitting 25% of the time. You are actually making, not 25, sorry, you've gone from hitting 75% of the time to hitting 50% of the time. You're like a quarter worse at killing Plague Bearers. But it's really relevant for the more fragile stuff, things like Bloodletters, things like Horrors, because these models have always been killed by incidental shooting. You used that word before. Things like guard mortars or just a few bolt guns. You're now neg1 to hit, and you can't reroll. A unit of 20 Sisters with rerolls will pick up a unit of Bloodletters, or at least the vast majority of them. But now, let's say they have 40 shots, 20 hit, rather than hitting on 3s with rerolls. So for a unit like Bloodletters, their durability has skyrocketed in this detachment.
Yeah,
wow. You can just keep listing units this is relevant for. Big units of Nurglings behind a ruin. You can't reroll hits against them and they're neg1 to hit. So no out of line of sight shooting is going to reasonably bother them. They can just sit there. Even things like Venoms for Drukhari that have always been good at killing infantry are now going to be pretty mediocre because they're hitting and wounding you on 4s. Just that neg1 to hit makes a huge difference. This really adds up. And especially for a Horde army. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the Demonic Disciples, anything that's a Chaos Demon gets it. Does Be'lakor get that?
He does.
So
yes.
Be'lakor outside of 12 is total neg2 to hit?
Yes, he is.
Wow.
So
Lovely.
I don't think I'm not sure if that was intended, but yes, because he is a Chaos Demons model. He does get a loci, and that would be the loci that he gets, which is overall a bit of a giggle. Yep. So that's pretty funny by and large.
Tau and Guard are fucked.
Yeah. So
Wow.
and I mean, Tau players have the Tau Codex obviously has its own issues at the moment. It is an older codex, but Tau volume has always relied on that Cao Yun for one turn to have full rerolls to hit.
It.
But now that ability inherently does nothing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing Disciples of Be'lakor, shooting that rerolls to hit is useless. That ability means nothing against you by and large.
Yeah.
Which is honestly that's a pretty powerful faction trait to get off the ground. Now, I mean, before I talk about the stratagems and all the rest and why I do think this is powerful, I've spoken about infantry. And obviously there's quite a lot of restrictions on what you can and you can't take. But there are also things that don't see very much play that are probably quite relevant in this sort of detachment. I'm looking at Soul Grinders. Now, Soul Grinders are toughness 7, 14 wound vehicles with a 3-up armor, 5-up invo that you can either give a 4-up invo or a 5-up feel no pain, depending on if you pick a relevant god choice. Now, you take one of those, you make it permanently neg 1 to hit, and you can never reroll hit rolls against it in shooting.
And they're not a demon
That's
engine.
annoying. They're not a demon engine.
Wow.
They have vehicle, comma, and demon. They are not a demon engine. So, like, something like that sitting out in the open previously would just get picked up by things like multi-melters. But now, again, hitting on 4s, no rerolls. The reliability is not there. You actually have a game against shooting armies. Because demons have always just been picked up by shooting. That's their weakness. And this is like a specific buff targeted at what makes demons more relevant. I think it's a very well done and very deliberate target at the weakness of demons.
Yeah, wow. Just looking before we, like you said, before we go even into strats and powers, this is great. It just like neuters all that little shooting, both against like the infantry and against like Be'lakor himself. So wow. Do you want to go into strats and powers next? Or,
absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, let's do his warlord trait. Actually, is that anything important?
Belly has to be your warlord if you're going to take this. Vitamin B must be the warlord. And he gets a warlord trait that's basically a chapter master buff. It's a 9-inch in your command phase, 9 inches, pick a unit that isn't a vehicle. Note there's no stipulation on core or anything there because these books are old. They don't even have core. And it gets full rerolls to hit. That becomes super relevant later on because, first of all, Chaos Demons have no ability to get Chapter Master rerolls to hit. There is nothing in that codex that gives you that. So that's already something very powerful. And also, reroll hits of 1 is incredibly rare in that book too. The only thing that does that is a Demon Prince. And Demon Princes are typically expensive and they're locked to 1 Chaos God.
Yes.
So Be'lakor can give any demon or any Heretic Astartes unit Chapter Master rerolls to hit in shooting and combat, which is a really, really big deal. It's overall a good warlord trait, and because you pick a unit and then they can move away, that becomes super relevant later on when we talk about some combos in this book that, to be honest, I think speak for themselves. I'm not exactly a tactical genius working these ones out. Some of them just scream at you being like, oh, that's dumb.
Wow.
So, the Be'lakor detachment itself, what's good about it, I suppose, is that whilst it's an army of renown, you can build it in any way you like. Patrol, brigade, whatever. But obviously, being only able to have one of each god does make it a bit challenging. I think a battalion's going to be the way to go. Now, when you take Disciples of Be'lakor, the other benefits you get is you get access to 6 new stratagems and a special ability that I think is unique, essentially, to Disciples of Be'lakor, and it's that you get all of the stratagems in Codex Chaos Demons and all of the stratagems in Codex Chaos Space Marines. So you are playing one detachment that gets 3 codexes, basically, worth of stratagems.
Holy fuck.
I think you have an enormous... And yes, they are older codexes, but you have an immense amount of stratagems, like a really, really huge amount of stratagems, and you're going to need them. Trust me, some of these new stratagems are absolutely nuts. On top of that, you get a entirely new psychic tree called the Noctis Discipline, which isn't just for Be'lakor. Any unit that is a Psyker in Disciples of Be'lakor detachment can generate from this Noctis Discipline. So you can really cherry pick. Do I want to take the Dark Hereticus for my sorcerer, or do I want to take Noctis? You get a new discipline to pick for everyone. And whilst I don't think it's as intended, there's actually no stipulation on the Noctis tree stating you must pick one or the other. It says you can generate. I did do a bit of digging and looked at the Space Marine powers, because obviously you do get a choice. And the Space Marine ones say instead of your normal tree. So this is worded differently. And so currently, as it is, I do believe you can generate from both, but time will tell if that's intended. I'm not sure it is, because there's a bit of a precedent to go the other way. Sort of leave that one alone.
Wow.
But Dineeth, I'm going to be guided by you, man, because there's so much good nonsense to talk about. Do you want to do strats, or do you want to do powers?
Well, let's go into the powers now, because that's a good lead in. So you can have psychers that are building from this Noctis discipline, as well as, same psyker or different psyker taking powers from their own tree, which is amazing, because we alluded to it earlier. There's so many overlapping powers that don't only buff Be'lakor, but buff other units. But yeah, so take us away. What are the key points you see in the psychic tree, man? So
look, a good psychic tree has a couple of good powers. This one has 5. There's literally one spell that I don't see will have competitive play. There's so many good options. The big winner here is obvious. I think it's called Shadow Step. It's a warp charge 6 power, and there's ways to make that cast really easy playing Chaos. Shrouded Step. Look, honestly, all of these powers are like really badly written. The same. Shadow, misty, hidden
Mantle
puns.
of Shadow,
they all
Shroud.
sound the same. Yeah, exactly. Pall of Despair. Anyway. So this is literally pick a unit with an 18 that's infantry, remove it from the table, and put it 9 away from your opponent. Again, Orcs have had to jump, Grey Knights have had Gate of Infinity. There have been a variety of spells like this, but for Chaos Demons, for Chaos Space Marines, this is a huge deal. Take, for example, the impact that one of the Psychic Awakening books had for Thousand Suns. When Thousand Suns got some extra rules, they got cults of the Legion. And one of the new abilities they got was Cult of Duplicity got a Warp Charge 7 power that did this same exact ability. There are no melee units in the Thousand Suns army outside of Magnus. There are literally none that are relevant. And people went nuts for this teleporting power. It's an incredible tactical tool, and straight away you started seeing Cult of Duplicity detachments in competitive Thousand Suns armies. This is just a cherry on top. This is just one of the many options. And remember, this is infantry units. You can cast this on Chaos Space Marine. I'm looking at Terminators. I'm looking at Havocs. Possessed. You can just teleport anywhere. But also Chaos Demons. So as soon as I read this, I think of Bloodletters. Bloodletters, 1 CP, charge 3d6. Right? So rather than spending 2 CP to deep strike some Bloodletters, you can just teleport them turn 1. If you go first, with a single unit of Bloodletters, it's 240 points. You can trap your opponent in their deployment zone with a 30-man unit that has a 3d6 rerollable +1 charge, turn 1. It's super aggro. It's super aggressive. So, Dineeth, that's annoying, right? That's actually quite frustrating.
Even just the tech of knowing that you can constantly throw units around to, retrieve Octaris data, or having little key units that can do bulk damage, like units of, Slanesh CSM infantry that can double shoot and stuff like that. That's 100%. Really, really impactful, and it's going to keep your opponent, keep them honest. It's going to keep them on edge because, yeah, like you said, demons having this power, crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yep, or even stuff like Obliterators. Obliterators are infantry. I don't know if there's much play there at the moment, but man, you can just teleport a little Obliterator unit anywhere you need it to go and then move it. Or, for example, use this psychic power to get out of combat and shoot. You could use it to fall back and shoot with Havocs or something like that. So it's got lots of different sort of uses. But that psychic power, well done, G-Dub, combos very well with another psychic power. There's one called...
Just before you continue, Liam, sorry.
Yeah.
You can use it on the Psyker if the Psyker's infantry when he's in combat to get out. Like that alone.
And then cast other spells.
Yeah, that alone is crazy.
Yeah, man. So that's a good psychic power. Sorry, let me rephrase. That's a great psychic power. But also, it's Warp Charge 6. So it's better than the Cult of Duplicity spell. It's better than the Jump. And as I'll talk about a bit later, there are some Chaos Space Marine and Chaos Demons characters that can do Psychic better and more reliably. And doing that means that you can always count almost on this going off. Now, there's another spell that is basically, it's a Warp Charge 7 power. It's Wreathed in Shades or something. The one that makes you not be able to be
you said it right,
Liam.
Shooting. You got it, mate.
Got him. So Wreathed in Shades is actually amazing. It's basically the Cloud of Flies stratagem for Death Guard. It's verbatim.
Yeah.
But it's a psychic power.
Yep. It's exactly the same as the Death Watch one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the same as the Death Watch one, except when you put it in the same tree as the teleporting spell, you can already see, you deep strike some demons, and then you just teleport the Havocs behind them and make the Havocs unshootable. Easy. They're in the mid-board, they can't be shot, they're doing an action, who knows? There's heaps of different crazy stuff you can do here. Or even just teleport your little unit off to the side of the map, where they're far away from enemy units and you've got other stuff, I don't know, Bellicor out the front of your army, and they can't shoot your fragile stuff. There's heaps of good uses for this. If you're versing out a line of sight shooting, cast it on some cultists doing a little action in your backfield. They can't be shot. That's it. Done.
Wow. It doesn't even have a stipulation with this one like some of the others do that you can't shoot or charge. You can just do anything, right? And so
absolutely.
Wow, that's so strong.
So, for example, you're going to the middle of the table to do a psychic action or something, and somebody else casts this on you. So then, okay, you actually have to shoot through Bellicor and, for example, a whole horde of demons, even if this guy is not being protected by another unit. There's heaps of good versatility there. Now, one thing that becomes really apparent when you read this is that they gave you a lot of durability to shooting. Can't be targeted, neg 1 to hit, can't use rerolls. But then one of the psychic powers helps you in melee as well. I think this one's called Penumbral Curse from memory. And this one is actually my favorite of the lot. The teleporting one is obviously good. This one kind of is a bit of a sleeper. It's an 18-inch range malediction, which doesn't need line of sight, which is hilarious. It's pick an enemy unit. They lose an AP on all of their melee weapons, and all melee attacks they make are neg 1 to wound.
Holy shit.
Which is actually super annoying. Because, again, if we're talking about Space Marines trying to beat on some demons, they're always wounding on 3s. So the neg 1 to wound makes actually a big difference. But then think about how annoying this is for Bellicor. He's already neg 1 to wound in shooting, right? So you have to come close to him. You pretty much have to beat him to death unless you're an oppressive shooting army.
Yeah.
But now your scary melee unit is wounding him most likely on 6s or 5s. Yeah. There's, odds are you're wounding him on 6s or 5s, which is just annoying.
Have they just made demons better Harlequins with this book?
That was pretty much something I was going to say, right?
It feels like it.
So pink horrors are Harlequins. They're better Harlequins. They have the same profile. They're T3, they're 4-up invo, but now they're neg 1 to hit. You can't reroll hits against them, and you can make them neg 1 to wound. There you go. And anyone who's tried to kill a Harlequin's army knows that it's actually not easy to do. It's actually really annoying.
Wow, that's wild, dude. Any others that stand out here? You said there was pretty much all but one that was crazy.
Yeah. So look, the last one that I'll mention that I really like is one called Betraying Shades. It's a really weird power. It's quite unique. It's pick 6 models in your opponent's unit, add up the attacks characteristic of all of those models, and then roll a dice for each of the total. Every 6 is a mortal wound, but if you roll 11 plus, it's every 5. Why is this crazy? Well, some new units, looking at you, Incubi, have 4 attacks a model. So you pick a 5-man Incubi unit and you're rolling, 20 dice on a 5-man unit, every 6 is a mortal wound, there's a reasonable chance that actually just wipes the whole squad. Things like witches as well. If you roll that 11, it actually kills a full 10-man witch squad on average. So, it's a little psychic power that might not look good on paper, but it can theoretically, and more reliably than any power of its type, just wipe an entire squad. Definitely not bad. You've also got spells in here to, make people fight last. And then something else that I keep forgetting because it's really bad. So those are the psychic powers that sort of stand out to me. It's definitely not a bad tree, especially when, some of the psychic trees for Chaos Demons are pretty lackluster. The ability to just sort of swap out to this versatile tree is a really big boon. Excuse the demons pun. It's a really big boon for Chaos Demons especially.
Dude, I'm just reading that Betraying Shades power, and I'm like just processing it now.
It's a long power, isn't it? Like you have to take a while and read it. It looks bad, but it's not. It's
so against like a good unit of Harlequins, you're just rolling 40 dice.
You have to pick 6 models.
Oh, okay, sorry, 6 models. So, wow, you're still rolling 24 dice. Okay, wow.
Yeah. And for example, Gene Stealers, which are a prominent, Tyranid build or anything of this sort of nature has bulk shitty attacks. And then you're just like, cool, now your bulk shitty attacks suck for you. If you roll that 11, okay, if you're targeting Gene Stealers that have 4 attacks a pop, you're picking 6 models, that's 24. On average, if you roll that 11, you're killing 8 models.
Wow.
You're straight up. And again, because you only pick 6 models in a unit, it's a weird spell in that it's actually better against small units. Because if you're picking, like, targeting a 20-man unit, meh. But if you're targeting like a wounded unit that has only, 6 models left for argument's sake, you should on average almost kill the entire squad with this psychic power.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
It's just good. Now, these psychic powers really lean into the ability to kind of cross the table, do mortal wounds, and then be durable when you get there, which are things that Chaos Demons actually couldn't do before. Demons have never had the ability to be mobile once they're down. When a demon's army is down, like deep struck or in combat, it's really hard to move again.
That was it. Yeah,
I've been playing demons for ages, man, and that's always the problem. If you keep as a secret, again, not relevant for this army, but if your units are in the wrong spot, you're in a lot of trouble. So this kind of fixes that. This is something that demons sucked at that they're now great at. Simple as that. Little supplement rule makes something you're bad at good. I don't know.
Yeah, you can already see the cool stuff you can do. Like just having dedicated shooting units that can sit back at a safe spot and not be targeted by your opponent. Like that straight off the bat's great. You've got it to jump. That's straight off the bat great. You can neuter your opponent's melee, which is what they'll probably want to do to bridge the gap. And then you've got dedicated mortal wounds. And we've got the Polar Despair power that is pretty much like an engulfing fear. Like you lose auras, you stop actions, that kind of stuff, and you fight last. The fight last on top of that is such a big just turn off. Like you can't come and engage 100%. Me. I'll just kill you. So yeah, that's cool. Do you want to move into? Are there any interesting relics actually, or not really?
There are no relics. At all.
Okay, cool.
But you do not lose access to Chaos Space Marine and Demon relics. You get all of the above, regardless of who your wallet is, which is quite handy. Now, just quickly before we move on to the strats, because again, there's no relics, so we can talk about the strats for a little while. I mentioned at the start that Be'lakor's Warlord trait becomes relevant, and that teleporting power is where it becomes relevant, because you can literally fire and forget demon units. You can, for example, give Chapter Master rerolls to a unit of Bloodletters or a unit of Pink Horrors or anything, and then you can just teleport them across the table. You could give Chapter Master rerolls to a unit of Terminators with Melter Guns, and you could jump them across and double shoot them with full rerolls to hit, and you don't have to keep any characters with them. It's minimizing the amount of sacrifice you as the Chaos player have to spend to do the damage, which is what you're already trying to do as a Chaos player. No Chaos player, doesn't want to kill their opponent. That's just how Chaos armies work. But now you can just teleport across the table. Turn 1, for example, give full rerolls to a unit of bloodletters and just yeet them across the table. Your opponent now has to fight a double fighting on death 30-man unit with power swords that is hitting on 2s with full rerolls. And when they get weakened, they go to 3s. But who cares? You've got Chapter Master rerolls to hit. Awesome. It's just a good ability, right?
Yeah.
Now,
I'm excited for the Be'lakor army versus Be'lakor army and see who can win that, like, wet towel fight.
now the stratagems are, to be honest, what finally made me like go, oh yeah, this is actually good. Because the psychic powers are nice. But then the stratagems, oh man, there are some absolute doozies in here. So GW leaked a couple of these in advance, and the ones that we've already seen are one called Wreathed in Shade, not Wreathed in Shade, Psychic Power, sorry, Legions of Shade, sorry. Now this one is really, really good. It's 1 CP. You can use it in the movement or the charge phase, and you can move horizontally through enemy models as if they're not there. Now, 1 CP, any unit, it doesn't say infantry, any unit.
Oh my God, Be'lakor
basically gets a Harlequin flip dot. Well, Be'lakor's got fly. Again, I'm looking at, I don't know, Terminators. I'm looking at bikers being able to move through enemy screens. I'm looking at 3d6 charging bloodletters that you can't screen against because they're just going to run straight through your screen in the charge phase. I'm looking at blood crushers. Now, man, blood crushers have a strat that is at the end of the charge phase, roll a dice, blah, blah, blah. Every model in your unit on a 2-up, you do a mortal wound. One of the key problems with this is that you never get to charge what you want. So you now just charge through the screen and hit whatever you want. Even if you never end up using this stratagem, your opponent has to have the knowledge that you can move through your units. But that's all borderline irrelevant. The real reason the stratagem is actually good is it is a 1 CP desperate breakout that doesn't stop you doing other stuff. That's why it's good. If you get wrapped in combat, you can just walk out with anything. Doesn't matter. It's amazing. It's actually so good. Wow. There's so many different things you can do with the strat.
How annoying is this? Because you can move through units in movement and charge because you're just using a different phase, right? So you have, you can literally move through stuff in the movement phase, then charge whatever you want in the charge phase if you're in range. So I'm thinking fast moving units, wow, would a unit of Chaos Bikers get this?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, they would.
Holy shit.
So, and they still have Mark of Slanesh. So, for example, I'm glad you brought up Bikers, man, because Bikers are in the list that I'm playing at the moment. They can double move because you can still access warp time. They can shoot twice. There's a decent melee strat in this book too. You can give them Chapter Master rerolls to hit. And oh no, my opponent's screened. Cool, I'm just going to move through your models because I really don't care very much. There's heaps of silly shit. Now, one thing, Dineeth, that we spoke last episode about combat tricks, about piling in, about how that can really mess with the game, little nuanced things like that. Now, what I see so many players doing when they're screening against melee armies is they put their screen 3 inches exactly in front of their units. Yeah. And that's important because you run out of space pretty fast, right, in your deployment zone, especially if you're playing Dawn of War. Now, what happens if I roll a big charge, again, Bloodletter's charge 3d6, and I can move through your screen? Now, now you have to realize that if I roll, 15 on a charge, or even just roll a 10, I'm going to move through your 25 mil base models, and I'm going to end my charge on the far side of you, which is an extra inch of movement, which is all you need to tag the juicy stuff beyond. So you're already seeing that the 3d6 charge abilities and being able to move through things can just turn the tide of a game immediately. And it's always going to be clutch situations where people's model placement isn't quite right. And this strat, the way I see it, it's just giving your opponent more opportunities to screw it up. It's hard work to think about. Every charge phase, every movement phase. It's hard work.
Yeah, wow. Do you think that CP expenditure in this army is going to be an issue? Are you going to be tempted to use a lot of CP really quickly?
100%. 100%. So I think this army is similar, for example, to armies like GSC, where when you build a list, you have, I think you almost need the starting on 10 or 11 because you're going to spend them all in like 2 or 3 turns. You're going to spend all of them. And that is probably the biggest flaw here because you're so hungry for CP. Now, that strat is cool, but the next one I wanted to talk about, I think, is actually the best one of the lot. And it's called Feast on Fears or something like that. This stratagem on paper looks niche, but is potentially game-winning. It's pick a Demonic Disciples unit in the morale phase. They gain an aura. Whenever a model flees from an enemy unit within 6, you either heal wounds, or if no one's wounded, you restore models to the unit. Here's the reason why that's particularly ridiculous. Remember I mentioned that anything in Codex Chaos Demons gets the Demonic Disciples ability. Well, Be'lakor has Demonic Disciples because he's a Chaos Demon. So here's the thing about Be'lakor. One thing we didn't mention is he's got an aura of neg-1 leadership and +1 to combat attrition checks. So if you're below half strength, you run away on 1s, 2s, and 3s if you're near Be'lakor. Now you pop this 1 CP stratagem when you charge, 20 Skitarii. If 10 of them run away, Be'lakor heals 10 wounds. There you go.
That's fucked.
It's really annoying.
That's so good.
Even if an imminent FAQ stops Be'lakor from doing that, think about 1 wound units like horrors, for example, a unit of horrors that splits. One of the problems with horrors is that once the pinks go away, the unit becomes way worse. But now, if enemy units are near you, you can start feeding off them to literally grow your unit back to starting size. It's not unreasonable versus another horde, especially when, there would be a psychic power that turns off auras that make you fearless. Yes, there is. You can do that. So you can turn off the fearless and then capitalize on this. You can start restoring units back to full strength. And there's a theme here because that stratagem combos particularly well with another strat called Mortal Boon, which is pick a Demonic Disciples unit in the morale phase that's within 6 of a Legion unit. They automatically pass morale and they count as rolling a 1. If you've ever versed Chaos Demons,
oh my
you know
God.
what happens if you roll a 1. Oh yeah. It's specifically written the way that I'm talking about, Dineeth.
Yeah, wow.
It's specifically written that way. So if you take a little shitty Chaos Space Marine character and just keep him back with a big blob of horrors, every single turn, you're automatically passing morale and getting D6 models back. That is on top of any models you can get back by making your opponent flee. So yeah, I don't know what else I can say about this. You could almost have this against some lists with certain combos. You can have a hyper durable unit of pink horrors that you can never reroll hit rolls against, that if you come close, I regenerate models with morale, and if you stay away, you're never going to kill them, and they're still going to auto pass morale and get models back.
Wow.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, is the demonic boon the other side of this strat, the 1 CP strat for the Legion Disciples? Is that any good?
It's it's not horrible, but I think, like you mentioned, I think a CP expenditure is going to be like particularly hefty in this army, and so you're kind of going to want to be pretty economical about how you spend the CP. Now, you only get 6 stratagems, and those are the big deal ones that we're talking about. And I think that it's really important to mention that because you can't take the big bads anymore. You can't take the keepers. You can't take the demon engines. It's kind of important to have a bit of a look about what these armies are going to be. And I see them as, horde demon lists, by and large, with a little bit of Chaos Space Marines sprinkled in there, probably for some shooting or some more punchy melee threats. You now have units that were particularly mediocre in the current meta that have a huge amount of buffs and relevant stratagems. And I actually think this is a competitive detachment, especially when it is gearing you. In fact, it's forcing you to take units that are good at the mission. It's forcing you to take bulk demons, infantry units, units that you otherwise probably would, sacrifice to take more decimators, more keepers of secrets, more demon princes. You're now going to have 100 plus bodies on the table of probably OBSEC, hyper durable to shooting, and you don't really want to go near them at all.
Yeah.
It's actually going to be a really good army for the mission, which is what we always talk about. You should be trying to play.
Yeah, and doesn't it just cut across those armies that are coming out now that look really scary to fight against? Like, how scary does a new AdMech look because they can just kill anything and everything? How scary does the new Sisters look because they can be because they can be everywhere with efficient rerolls and things like that? This looks like it cuts across that really well. And on top of this, we're about to get orcs around the corner, and we're not quite sure what's going to be out with the orc book, but maybe those things that we thought were, when people were thinking the sky's falling with AdMech and Sisters and Drukhari, maybe that's not that bad after all. Maybe they're going to be put in their place with a book like this. What do you think?
Well, I mean, one thing to think about is what is actually durable and what is not. Because, I mean, it's really difficult sometimes to look at a unit and think, is it actually going to live? Is it actually going to do anything? For example, a unit like, let's just say some Pink Horrors. Let's say some Pink Horrors get shot by, 20 Skitari Vanguard, the kind of, currently the unit that people are talking about, because they have a ridiculous stratagem that is every 4-up to hit is an automatic wound. Now you're shooting Pink Horrors, you get 60 shots, and normally these guys are hitting on 3s with full rerolls to hit. It's very easy to give them that, and you go fishing for the 4-ups to wound, because obviously the 4-ups automatically wound. You've got 60 shots, but against Disciples of Be'lakor, you're going to get 30 hits. That's it. If you buff your ballistic skill, you might get a bit more. Let's just say you get 30 hits. All of those wound, half of those fail, you're going to kill 15 Pink Horrors. That's it. But if you were playing if you weren't playing Disciples of Be'lakor, you actually almost kill all 30.
Mm.
That's the significance of this buff. And then rather than having a 5 out of 6 chance of failing morale, you can have an 100% chance of passing and regenerating D6 of those models.
Yeah. And like all of a sudden, we've got this one unit like that. I've played against that AdMech Vanguard brick twice now, and each time I played against it, I'm like, wow, it doesn't even matter that I have to put all these resources into killing this thing because it's only like a sub 200 point. It's like a 170 point unit, right? Now it's the other way around. It's like that 170 point unit didn't do much to me. I healed D6 back, and now I'm just going to walk through it or just not let it do anything. That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Do I think this is immediately something that's amazingly top tier? Hell no. But do I think this is something that is nuanced enough for a competitive player to deep dive into all the options? Hell yes, I do. And I really, really want to do my best to try and make a competitive list out of this. Because, I mean, if you think about the things that are so potent in these two books, one of the things that I've been using for a while, and, Dineeth, you saw me play it, I've always loved the big 9-man Slaneshi biker unit.
Yeah.
But now, what happens if you can't shoot that biker unit back? It's just going to be roaming around the table behind a wall of demons, and you can't shoot it at all. It's just going to be going around doing its own thing, sticking close to the board edge. All your artillery, all your plasma guns, all your buddy Skitari bin chickens with autocannons, they can't shoot you at all. So this army techs into one thing that demons have always done well, and it's stopping shooting. So you're durable now to shooting. People can't get rerolls to shooting, so they have to come close to you. But when they come close to you, Fiends lock you in combat. The Contorted Epitome locks you in combat. The Forbidden Gem stops your auras. Be'lakor's Psychic Powers stop your auras. It's weird. It is kind of like fixing a key weakness in an army that was almost competitive on its own. Yeah. Almost. Like just a little bit short in some respects.
That's exactly it. It's like it's plugging the hole for this book, and it's just like setting everything loose. It's like what a better version of what the Creations of Bile supplement did for the army. well, it did for Chaos, but this
Yeah.
is just like way better.
Oh, 100%. And you got to remember as well that there were so many armies that plugged demon units into Chaos Space Marine units and vice versa. But now you can do it in one battalion. And the real benefit of that isn't, oh, my army's battle forged. The real benefit of that is you don't need more than one detachment. You can just run one battalion.
Yeah.
So you can start reasonably. I think almost all armies that will be using this will start with 11 CP because you need 1 CP for the Banner of Blood on a unit of Bloodletters. That's pretty much the only thing you're going to spend CP on.
Yeah.
And then over the course of the game, you've got 16 to spend. I think that's more than enough for a lot of scary tricks.
It's this is Bellacor's real space raid detachment, mate. That's what's going on.
That's it. Oh man, if I got plus 2 CP for every patrol, I'd be pretty happy.
Oh geez.
Yeah,
well,
that's kind of the long and short. Oh, you go. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to add. We've clearly discussed why we like this book. Liam has just enlightened me after I did 5 minutes of pre-reading, and now I realize how cool this is. Is there anything else you want to kind of finish on? And did you want to discuss any of the ideas that you had on this just yet, or are you still kind of building?
I'm pretty green with this at the moment, so I don't really have like a list that I've nailed down yet. But the key winner here is Pink Horrors. Pink Horrors and Bloodletters are just absolutely standing out because obviously you have the reinforcement points. You spend them pre-game, to get blues and brimstone horrors from pinks. But there are now 2 different ways in Disciples of Be'lakor to regenerate pink horrors. So you can actually start building a mega unit, right? You start with 30 pinks. You can halve it to about 60 blues. But then every morale phase, you can get back God knows how many pinks if your opponent's not careful. And so you can actually start having a unit of potentially infinite size. You can just keep growing it. There's no limit because you can keep restoring the pinks. And then they can keep splitting if you have the points. You can resurrect, split, resurrect, split, resurrect, split. And this unit is absolutely oppressive to play the primary against. You could have an 100 model unit, obviously very unlikely to happen, but you can have an 100 model unit that's OBSEC. That's so annoying.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee your opponent's just going to pick in their ranks and be like, look, I've just got to get what I can. I'm just going to try and churn through this unit.
Yeah, it's pretty silly.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see if like the diehard Chaos players that have been like juggling around to try and make Chaos work shift to this and just gain a whole heap of power. Like we, as much hate as Drakari copped, when the book came out, we saw the diehard Drakari players jump on and just love it. And we're currently seeing
Absolutely.
the diehard AdMech players and Sisters players jump back on and really enjoy it. I wonder if we'll get the same kind of love from Chaos players for this book, because like you said, it's obviously very nuanced. It's not easy to play, but you just get so many more tools that you can use just when you need them. And if you're smart with your CP budgeting and smart with your psychic powers and overlaying buffs, it looks awesome.
Yep, and that's really all I wanted to say about it. I'm definitely going to be running this for a couple of months. I'm going to be deep diving and trying a whole bunch of different stuff. And if anyone ever wants to have a chat about this is my new favorite thing. Please message the podcast. I'm always keen to have a chat.
Yeah, send us your lists. Liam is 24/7 on the podcast Facebook replying. So
it's not even wrong.
Dude, I think I'm right. I'm like, I better reply to this lovely person that's messaged us, and Liam's already sent through 500 words. I'm like, oh, well, look, Liam's got a light day. Now, this makes me upset, dude, because last time we played, I actually won by a few points, and I know now the next time I come over to yours, I'm just going to have to be pulling that Be'lakor model out of my bumhole. So it's going to be hard.
Oh, man. I mean, look, Space Marines in general, not being able to reroll hits is a good part. It's just good.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm excited to see how it goes. Anything else you want to close off on, Liam?
Nah, that's me. Thanks very much for listening, everyone.
Yeah, wow, we talked for an hour about one new Be'lakor model. Lovely. If you guys liked what you listened to, of course, as normal, give us a like on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, leave us a review. It does help new listeners find us. It is a little while away, but like we mentioned last episode, the Normal Blokes are running a GT in Brisbane on the 18th and 19th of September. The event's on Facebook, and if you look us up on Down Under Pairings, the link is up. Have a look at the players pack. If you're keen, pay the entry, shoot us a message. We'd love to see, as many people as we can. As with all the Gladiator Gaming events for the remainder of the year, I believe, we'll be running the WTC FAQ. So any people looking at, looking at playing with that rule set is a really good opportunity to jump in. But yeah, other than that, Liam, I guess we've got team event coming up in August, Norm Blokes event. We've got ATC around the corner in October as well. So I think the next 2 to 3 months are going to be very busy. But yeah, everyone else, stay safe and see you next time.
See ya.